Good morning. I'm with Jim McDonald, CEO of Kootenay Silver. Symbol is KTN on the TSX Venture. And Kootenay has a really nice set of Mexican silver assets, including the La Columba, a high-grade silver project, and La Cigarra, which we're going to talk about today. At La Columba, the company is in the midst of a 50,000 meter drill program. So we're going to get into it today with Jim. And before we get started and talk about the company, I want to ask you about this silver market. This is like nothing we've ever seen before. I mean, I thought the breakout above $50 was a big deal, but now we're at 90. How does this silver price environment feel, and how does it affect things at a corporate level?
Well, it's all good from the perspective of a corporate level. I mean, it's incredible, absolutely incredible, the acceleration. We've talked about this for a number of years now. First of all, that silver was going to make new highs. It finally did. And the other thing we've always talked about is the acceleration and the speed with which it'll break the highs. And it's eye-popping. It's just within a few weeks has broken $50, and now it's 90. And of course, that we're an explorer. We're about to become a developer as we move these projects along. And with these silver prices, we have 4 deposits. And with these silver prices, I mean, it makes a huge difference. Columba is our most recent discovery. We're drilling 50,000 meters there to expand that maiden resource. And now the new silver prices make the other 3 deposits look really, really great. So we're going to be started advancing those towards economic studies systematically. And so corporately, it just puts us in an incredible position. Suddenly, we're going from a drill expansion on Columba, moving it towards 100 million ounces from the current 54 million ounces. And from drill expansion to potential developer here. So we'll be doing some studies on systematically on these other deposits with this new price. And also you can imagine the appetite for investment in the silver space has exploded at the same time.
Yeah, that's the big thing that stands out to me in the last couple of weeks about the silver move and the silver mining space. A lot more people are asking me about silver miners and which ones do I recommend. And, you know, the first thing I always have to tell them is there's very rarely a pure play on silver. In fact, there's probably not an actual pure play on silver. But if a company has more than half of its economic value in the ground in silver, then it's a silver stock in my universe. And it's very rare to find the quality of assets that you have at KTN where it's so silver primary, it's so silver dominant. I mean, look at the news release you put out last week. These are, strong silver intercepts of high grade at the D vein and the, Lupe vein. Before we talk about that, the ongoing, drill program, what do you see as the vision for the company longer term with these silver assets in Mexico in this silver bull market and environment? I mean, is your vision to advance this to be a real silver mining company?
Well, we're going to take all the steps necessary for that to happen, Robert. And our corporate objective is actually sell it at some point to a mining company. But in order to do that and get the best price, you take all the steps necessary to get it into production in the first place. And our board and management team has a tremendous amount of depth for a junior. We've operated mines, we've brought mines into production, we've financed every step along the way. So we've got that ability. And we will be judiciously moving these projects ahead, starting PEAs, moving it, if it's justified, then moving it to feasibility, the big aggressive drill program at Columba. So we'd like to see ourselves exiting this year transitioning from an explorer discoverer, expanding our resources, to a developer discoverer with a tremendous pipeline of projects, one behind the other after the other.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about the drill program and these results, starting with the D vein. Tell us about what you're finding there, and how much are you extending the known vein system?
Yeah, so both D vein and the Lupe B2, what we call it, that is what we reported on there about a week ago. And all of the holes are pretty aggressive step out, so about 100 meters away from any other hole. So expanding on the envelope and size of what we have. And they all expanded what we're doing. On the D vein, those holes are pushing to depth, going deeper. And we now see a 500-meter vertical extent of steady mineralization on that vein. And the most important thing about the D vein, not the highest grades we've seen on that structure by any means, but some of the very deepest holes still in really wide mineralized structure, wide open to depth, which is great, really exciting. We're very, very interested to see what happens to depth on the D vein, but at the same time, we're still stepping along the length of it, especially going to the east very systematically at 100 meters. And then with regard to Lupe, same thing. These are like 100-meter step outs from anything else. And we're starting to see the development of these mineralized chutes and where they're thickest and how they trend, and starting to follow that. We got some just really great grades on the Lupe vein this round. So quite excited. And this is, we are now only about 14,000 meters into our 50,000-meter drill program. And so it's going to be steady drilling all year here.
So you're starting at the D vein and the Lupe vein, but you'll be moving to the B and the F veins shortly. Can you tell me the allotment of meters per vein?
Yeah, so the majority is going into the D. It'll be close to between 25 and 30,000 meters on the D. And then the next would be that Lupe B2 corridor. There's actually 3 veins in there, two main ones that look really great. And so we'll have 10,000 meters plus into that, around, I think it was 5,000 meters or so in the F vein. And then it was around 10,000 meters of exploratory lower priority areas with just a few holes but good mineralization. So we have on our website in the presentation one slide that shows how we've prioritized the different veins and the estimated meterage going into each one of those, and the level of priority. So we have the very highest, like the D vein, the B2 Lupe and F. And then we have a high priority and a medium priority and a low priority. Low priority would be structures, veins we haven't even drilled yet.
Yeah, but that's the fun stuff, and that can show a lot of expansion and upside potential on the resource. So yeah, I mean, this is a classic, Mexican vein field, and it's silver dominant. It's really silver rich with lead and zinc as byproducts, obviously. So you've basically been focusing on like 5 or 6 of the high priority veins so far, but there's a lot of room for expansion on the eastern side of the project. How many vein target areas do you have lined up that you plan to test?
Oh, there's about a dozen. And the eastern side, some really interesting areas like the Preciosa and the J vein extension. That structure can be followed for almost 4 kilometers. And there's an area, JZ, with some extremely high-grade hits from previous drilling that we're vectoring in on as well. And another structure we call the O vein, quite interesting. It's the easternmost drill hole we have so far on the property. And at surface, we don't see any silver values. We just see this little broken rock brecciated structure. And but when we drill down to depth to what we call our grade line, we hit over kilogram silver. So really interesting. It's wide open. And so, and then just to back up a little bit. So it's classic vein system, but we are almost entirely preserved from any kind of erosion. This vein system sitting there today it was originally deposited with almost no erosion. We're sitting in an old volcano, so we have this caldera, like a bowl. The bottom of the bowl is the erosional low point, and that's just exposed the top of your veins where they have become productive with silver and become strongly developed. When you go up elevation, walking up the hillsides of the caldera in any direction, after about 80 meters elevation gain, you're losing your vein. It becomes erratic, and you lose the silver right down to background in a lot of cases, just less than 5 grams per ton. And so when we're seeing areas where we follow that structure and we see nothing at surface, but we know what elevation we need to go to, we know we're above the grade line. So if that structure, especially if it's shown to be mineralized anywhere along it, drill down to that grade line, and there's a really good chance you're going to find silver. So it's pretty incredible. It's like a classic textbook example of a vein system, entirely intact. A little bit of erosion. Essentially, whatever was deposited here for silver originally still sitting here.
Why was this property available to you? Because obviously these Mexican silver vein fields are highly sought after because they can prove up into very profitable mining camps. Why was this available?
Largely because it is so poorly eroded. You don't really see it for what it is. So when you're too high in elevation, you don't see well-developed veins. You just see ratty little outcrops of broken rock with maybe a little tiny bit of vein in it, and maybe a little bit of alteration. If you were to put back 80 meters of rock back in that caldera hole, the way it was before that caldera exposed everything, you probably wouldn't find enough justification to drill this property, because the silver values would be so low, the structures would look so weak, and it's just because you're literally above the top edge of the system, just above it. So it's almost hidden, not quite, but almost hidden. So you can't, walking around on the surface, you can't immediately or very easily appreciate the size of it. So that's one reason, and a big reason. The other is that in Mexico, with the system of how concessions get titled, it's you're required to pay taxes every year, and you're required to do a certain amount of work every year per unit of area, hectare, and report on that. And if you don't, the government will give you a warning, and if you don't comply, they'll cancel the concession. So you can get cases where concessions have been canceled but not yet liberated by the government for acquisition. And when that happens, it's just an administrative inefficiency. We've seen cases in projects or areas we followed that we wanted to acquire where these things sit in limbo between cancellation and liberation. You can't acquire that concession at that point. And they can sit there for 10 years, sometimes 20 years. We've seen cases ourselves waiting for over 10 years. And so that was part of the reason the project sat there for a long time. And when the core area became liberated, a local mining guy picked the concessions up, and then we took the option from him when he introduced the project. And incredibly, this project was last worked seriously in 1982, when Louisiana Mining dewatered the old mine on the F vein. And they sampled, mapped and sampled it, and then left the project. They'd bought an operating project in Tiltita district. And from that point to when we optioned it, there'd been really nothing done and had never, ever been drilled. So just an incredible situation. But because of how that system works in Mexico, you find these situations occasionally where a previously operating mine is sitting there and hasn't been drilled or barely drilled.
Very good explanation. That makes a lot of sense. So that's the flagship. Very impressive. That's where all the action is in 2026. But La Cigarra is sort of your number 2 asset, and this is no slouch. Over 50 million ounces of silver in the measured and indicated category, and 11 million ounces in inferred at above 100 grams silver average grade. And that's silver. That's not silver equivalent. That's a pretty good asset. What is the plan there?
That's a great asset. It sits on trend with the Santa Barbara, San Francisco del Oro mining district, 30 kilometers to the south of us, and right on the same mineralized trend. So you head north towards our project from that mining district, cross the wide valley covered with gravels, so it's blind. It reemerges on our project. They are mining today in that district at a 2,000 meter depth. They've been mining for 500 years there. And La Cigarra sits at surface. It's an open pit constrained deposit and open for expansion. The main structure we follow for over 10 kilometers, and we've barely got a drill hole along that trend going to the south towards the old district. So the upside here is really fantastic. And on paper, when we did a financial model on paper, we always knew that, hey, above $30, this thing starts to look pretty interesting, and we'll probably want to advance that to an economic study, a PEA. And so now we're re-examining that, obviously, because we just in the last few months have decidedly broke well past that $30 mark and past the old highs in the 50s, and now incredibly trading over 90. So we're definitely going to be advancing that La Cigarra project and moving it along as well. It could put us in a position of being able to be a developer by the end of the year, with a great pipeline of Columba right behind it, expanding it, Columba to 100 million ounces. So that's kind of the big picture. And then we've also got to get back now this quarter and have a look at just the financial model on the promontory on La Negra and see what they look like. I mean, if you use spot prices, I'm sure they're going to look fabulous. And so suddenly we've got 4 deposits that all look very exciting. I can't say much about their economic viability without these studies, but holy cow, they all deserve to be moved in that direction.
What about the potential for exploration there in the southern part of the La Cigarra project, where it's undercover, it's buried? That would seem to me to be a very interesting, very large strike extent target area.
Yeah, very interesting. And very lightly drilled. So the resource sits along 2 kilometers of that structure to the north. But as you go south, there's very few holes as you head towards that district to the south. There's less than a dozen holes along that trend, and shallow. So probably no more than 100 meters vertically at the greatest along that trend. So it's wide open for discovery potential there in the classic high-grade veins. And adjacent to that trend is a zone we call Venados, where we drilled a hole several years ago. The best run in it was something like 20 meters of 90-some grams, but the bottom 250 meters was all mineralized vein breccia. and anomalous the whole way with silver. And so that was a blind discovery, that area. And we don't understand it very well because you can't see it at surface. So but at any rate, it just shows how much potential is sitting there, and that definitely needs to be followed up.
Absolutely, yeah. So, La Cigarra is very interesting to me, and I would say that's a very important asset to unlock value for KTN shareholders. Just going back to that silver price move, and look, I don't think we can say we're comfortable at $90 or maybe even at $75 yet, but certainly I think that probably we're in a $50, silver price environment at the very least, a long-term silver price environment. And what I notice is, thinking back over the last couple of decades in the mining industry, silver projects were always evaluated with a silver price of like $15, or I can recall $12. Only recently we started using a $25 price in certain economic studies. So if we're literally doubling and perhaps maybe even 3xing the silver price used in these economic studies, I would say that has to make a bunch of projects that were previously thought to be borderline or marginal, deposits now could be wildly economic. What do you say to that thought?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Bang on that thought. And just take a look at the first quarter of the new year and the money that the silver producers are going to be making. It's going to be phenomenal. And I think the generalist investment community is really going to wake up when they see that. It's going to be incredible. You've added 40, well, from the third quarter, you're going to be adding, assuming you had $90 all the way through the quarter, you're going to be adding nearly $60 an ounce to what the third quarter reported at. 50 for sure. And that's all profit on the ounces. So yeah, absolutely. It goes down to the resources too. So the resources that were not economic before are certainly going to become economic at these kind of prices. So it has a huge impact, really big impact. And for us, it's going to have a big impact on four different deposits, all with their own unique characteristics. And we're drilling away in Columba to get it up to size. But we're going to be revisiting those others, and starting with La Cigarra that you like so much, and for good reasons. The grade, open pit potential there, the upside. Like I said, on our financial models, when we got above 30, it started to look like, hey, maybe you guys should be doing a PEA on this. And now we're well past that.
Yeah, this, in my opinion, when I look at the company's assets, this is like the low-hanging fruit where there could be a lot of value, that could be unlocked. So yeah, my point is, like, previously, let's say 5-6 years ago, the threshold for like a good gold deposit was like 2 million ounces at a gram average, in like an open pit setting. That that's a good project. If you have 2 million ounces at 2 grams, it's a great project, right? Yep. So now in this silver price environment where the gold silver ratio is like 50-1 and the silver price is above 75 an ounce, I look, well, maybe 100 million ounces of 100 grams silver is actually a great ore body. Like, that could be fantastic.
Huge. Yeah, really huge.
So
no question.
What do you think the biggest opportunity is for the Kootenay Silver shareholders in 2026, James?
Well, we've got a lot of work to do to prove this, but I think we'll start advancing that La Cigarra project. And if we can show that it's economic at a $40 silver price, I don't know what silver price we'll be able to use. That's going to be a tricky thing when we do a study there. So anyway, looking forward, be great at the end of the year. Hey, we've got a development project here in La Cigarra. We've got a pipeline of incredible projects right on its heels, starting with Columba. We've got Columba at 100 million ounces is what the objective is. And then we'd be looking at a PEA for Columba. So now you're turning it into a developer with a tremendous pipeline of projects in the back end.
Very good. And I got to ask you one more question, because I know some people have asked me. With the Kootenay Silver share price, rallying in 2025, the trading volume also increased quite a bit. Does that make you eligible for any of these silver exchange traded funds in 2026?
It may. I don't know what the criteria are. We used to be on the SILJ. They switched a few years ago to just producers, or primarily producers, and some developers. So at some point, yeah, we'll meet the threshold definitely, especially since we now have an objective to start turning ourselves into a developer, in addition to being a discoverer, expanding on our resources. We'd like to be that developer, as I said, because if you can turn yourself from exploration expansion into a developer, now you're going to get a re-rating on the ounces you have. You just create a lot more value for those ounces when you start to show economic viability.
And can you, remind us of who some of the key shareholders are of the company?
Yeah, sure. So Eric Sprott's been a shareholder since about 2019. He participated in the last financing. We've got Sprott Asset Management as well in there. We've got Conway out of Switzerland, which is Conway Gold 2000 Group. Condire out of Dallas, Texas. Those are the biggest ones.
Very good. James, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you a very strong 2026.
Yeah, thank you, Robert.